Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Calderon and today with my partners Angelica Camacho, Santiago Aguja and Nicole Gaitan we're going to talk about a book called Frankenstein.
So let's begin. Chapter 1. The story begins with the captain called Robert Walton and the sailor. They were on a big ship during the night, but the sailor was awake at the top of the mast, observing the miles of ice that covered the sea. But a moment he observed something strange. He was so scared, therefore he notified to the captain what was happening, and the captain started to look what was going on. Suddenly he saw 10 dogs pulling a sledge over the ice, with a word man over the sledge. Straight away several mountains appeared. Then the sledge disappeared through it, but a few minutes later another one appeared, but that one disappeared as well between the mountains of ice. Good news is for them up to now.
At night it was raining too hard, causing a terrible storm, but in the morning they woke up early and were observing the lake. Later, the sailors saw some pieces of ice floating over the ship. They were observing so carefully until they found a broken sledge and a strange man who was almost dead. He couldn't walk and he fainted. Then the man told them that his name was Victor Frankenstein, and every day he was writing his story for them to read.
Chapter 2. Well, since now we start with Victor Frankenstein's story, full of horror, intrigue, and sadness.
This chapter has a pretty exciting beginning, with Victor telling a bit of his childhood life. The cutest thing is when he mentions that he learned love from watching his parents. A good example, people learn by looking at the behavior of their parents. The next thing is that he mentions how Elizabeth got into his family. She was adopted from a poor family. That's kinda lovely, don't you think? And he mentions that her love for her was growing as he was growing up.
Our curious little Frankenstein was very keen on the secrets of life and how put life in the things. It was a day he was 15 now when he saw strong lightning completely destroying a tree in front of the house. After he witnessed the power of electricity, he decided to study all about it.
Chapter 3. Over his 17 years all was perfect. He had all that he wanted, but at that time his mom was quite ill, and she could die. His mother's death arrived for him and his family was the worst time. Elizabeth and Victor had to take care of his family. Elizabeth was the bravest and helpful woman with her sweet smile and her happiness. She helped a lot in the saddest days. Unfortunately for them, Victor must go. But you may be wondering, why? Because he must go to the university. He was sad and had a hard time, but he took the risk. Victor was very excited for his first class, and he was lucky because he met one of the most intelligent and greatest scientists called Waldman. Victor liked his class a lot because the teacher gave a wonderful talk full of advice and steps to be a good scientist.
This moment had a deep feeling in Victor. Victor started to remember the holidays, the work of lighting, and his dreams grew up to match, with many kinds of perspective and thoughts. He wanted to study electricity to help people and discover the secrets of life. The next day, he decided to create the greatest machine. It took a lot of time to finish it. Victor had the hope that that machine could be useful for people's lives.
He had to work so hard and learn all about this. The professors gave him his own laboratory. The time passed and Victor in his laboratory built a very tall mast. It was the highest thing in the city. The mast could catch lighting and can transport electricity to the machine. He concluded that electricity was a useful tool to give life to the thing.
Chapter 4. Victor did not allow anyone to get into his laboratory because obviously he was doing the most important experiment of his life. He had certain standards for his creation, but he couldn't accomplish all of them. The result was something totally different to his perspective of beauty. The face of the body was awful, the skin was yellow, and its size as well. And after a year of hard work, he decided to test every aspect of the body and the machine. After a few minutes, the creature started to move. He ran and locked the laboratory. And after a few hours of sleep, he woke up and saw the creature standing on his bed.
And things were getting worse and worse. Victor jumped off his bed and ran to the garden. Fearful, he just went for a walk, without knowing where he was walking. But then he arrived at the station, and saw his dear friend Henry Clerval. Henry's father let him study at the university where Victor was studying, therefore they could be closer. Also, Henry told Victor about his family concern, being that it had been a long time since he visited them. Victor, still afraid, took Henry to his flat, and thankfully the monster wasn't there.
Chapter 5. One day Victor received bad news from his father by a letter. His brother William had been murdered. Meanwhile, he was playing with his brother Ernest. William disappeared for a long time, and Ernest, Elizabeth, and his father started to search him. Some hours later, in the morning, one of them found William's dead body strangled. Maybe because someone wanted to steal his gold chain, Victor took the train as fast as he could to Geneva. The journey was long. Then, in the night, he decided to find the place where William died and then go home in the early morning.
The train arrived, so he decided to look for that place. He found the place and started to cry, but some minutes later Victor started to see a strange figure which was looking at him. He knew it was the monster that he did. Actually, he started to wonder to himself why the monster was there, and he found the answer. The monster had murdered his brother. Victor was full of pain for his brother's death. When he saw his own creature, he decided to catch him before he couldn't at the top of the mountains the creature disappeared.
Chapter 6. Poor Victor was ill, but the police let him go to his father's house, and good news were waiting for him. Well, not too good. The police have found the murderer of his brother. They found in the pocket of a coat the gold chain of his dead brother. And it was Justin Scott, the woman who took care of the children in the house. Victor and the family made everything they could to defend her. They knew that she couldn't do such a thing. To save Justin's life, Victor decided to tell the police about the monsters he has created. Well, the courage of them, for sure, they didn't believe him.
Victor took a boat and went out of the Geneva lake and reflected on why he didn't end his life right there. And it was just because of two reasons: his father, and he had to protect his family. Honestly, I will do the same thing. Just stand still and protect what I love. Victor became ill again and left the house to have time for himself. But suddenly, he saw the creature running towards him. They had a pretty interesting conversation of how he was filled with anger and hatred towards his creature, and how it was with sadness and emptiness. After exchanging words, the creature asked Victor to follow him to tell his own story.
Chapter 7. It was the hour to listen to the monster story. It begins when the monster decided to leave the laboratory. He was in the countryside where he passed bad situations. The monster didn't have food, didn't have a place to stay. He was cold and hungry. However, he walked as much as he could. Suddenly, he saw a warm hut where there was a man who was making breakfast. The monster was so near to him, but the man was frightened to see his awful face. The man escaped far away from him. The days passed and the monster walked, until he arrived at a village with many houses, and the monster entered in one of them. There were children, and they started to shout so loud. People from the village were scared, and they started to throw stones at him. Some hours later, he found an empty hut, but he was afraid to go into it. But he lost his fear. The place was perfect. He felt safe, warm, and comfortable. But one day he realized that he wasn't alone. He discovered a small hall where he saw three people in a house: a beautiful girl, an old man, and a young man. He was interested in them.
The monster wanted to know them, but he tried to be careful. The monster realized that the family was living in a difficult situation, and he started to help them during the night. Some weeks later, the monster began to understand some words, and he realized that each of person had a name, were Agatha, Felix, and the Alderman's father. Each of them had beautiful faces and bodies. Later on, he reached to speak their language. One day, the monster found a river where he saw his own face. It was horrible and awful. He understood people's behavior when he was in the village or when the men escaped. He was sad and angry about his physical appearance until he omitted the idea to meet the family.
Every morning, the family was more surprised about what was happening. They were talking about a magical creature who did these incredible things. It used to be a great help for them, but it wasn't enough. The family used to be sad and worried. However, the monster wanted to make them happy, but he couldn't. Although he was waiting for the perfect moment to talk to them, with the expectation to have three good friends and also help them.
Chapter 8. Fresh summer and a beautiful lady called Sophie. The guy with the ugly face, the monster, was looking at the lady late in a house. The family that was living in the house taught her their language and some about humans' history, being very useful to the monster. He didn't know the meaning of a lot of words at that moment.
The creature kept watching the family and discovered many things. How Sophie and Felix love each other, and started questioning how mankind, knowing the good and evil, decide to hurt each other. Something very sad was that the creature mentions as he was learning, he was getting unhappier. Makes me think on how knowledge is not always a gift to be happy. Continuing, the creature discovered that Sophie took some money and escaped from her house to look out for Felix, because her father didn't agree with her getting married with Felix. The monster realized that the family was good people, and that it was the time to introduce himself to the father and tell him about his feelings and how much he was alone.
As he tried to speak with the blind father, he could just exchange some words with him and listen to some encouraging words from the father. But suddenly, the children came back. Things are just sadder for this lame monster. Felix hit him, the lady ran away, and the youth fainted. After that, the monster ran out of the house and then he returned to his hunt.
Chapter 9. After the incident in the house, the creature ran away and hid in the hood while he was feeling angry and sad. At the end, he decided to try again and talk to the blind man. Unfortunately, the family were gone by that time. It turned out that they moved out of that house at night. The monster just knew one last person, Victor Frankenstein, even though he hadn't shared it with him. He knew that he belonged to him. The creator was still wondering why the person that created him didn't save him for unhappiness.
Then he decided to go to Geneva to find answers. While the monster was traveling, he helped a girl who fell into a river, and the girl's father shot at him with a gun. The monster became sadder and angrier. He realized that happiness wasn't for him, and he started to hate his own creator. 2 months later, he arrived to Geneva and decided to hide among some trees. After some time, a boy ran and found the creature. The monster thought that the boy could become his friend, so he cuffed the little boy and the child over his eyes and shouted that his father was Mr. Frankenstein.
And that was all the creature needed to hear for knowing that the little boy belonged to his enemy, his creator. The child fought as much as he could, but the monster put his hands around his neck and killed him. The creature saw a gold chain around his neck. He took it and began looking for another hiding place. When he found one, he saw a woman asleep on the floor. He hate he'd hate her for being pretty, and he left the chain of one of the pockets of the girl. The monster knew that the police would think that she killed the child.
Chapter 10. And the lonely and miserable monster finished. He asked Victor to make a new monster, but now it had to be a woman, and the new monster shall be his wife. Victor refused it, but the monster threatened him. After overthinking it, Victor made the monster promise to stop being evil if he made the new creature. With tears, the monster promised. Then Victor returned to his family's house, and in his mind was just the dreadful work he had to do to keep his family assured.
Victor decides to go back to Geneva and try to make another monster for his lonely and miserable creation. He really wanted to marry Elizabeth, but he knew that if he didn't go to start his research job, he wouldn't be able to be happy again, with the creature destroying everything he loved. Therefore, he went to England, more exactly to London, and needed for his own laboratory. He went as far as Iceland, where he could build the laboratory. Then he started to make preparations to create his new woman monster. Meanwhile, as he had traveled to London with Henry to make his project in secret, he took advantage of an invitation that some friends made to Henry to go to Scotland, and Victor went to the island secretly.
Chapter 11. One evening, after 2 months, Victor had almost everything done. He knew that he could finish the woman monster that night, but he was asking himself if he should finish the work. He kept wondering for a while until he decided to not finish the work. He cut the body into pieces. The monster saw how Victor destroyed his woman, and then he entered the laboratory saying that Victor has destroyed every last of hope of happiness. Now, the monster only had one wish, end with his creator happiness. Before he ran out of the laboratory, he told Victor that he was going to be on his wedding night.
Victor cried because he was thinking about what could happen to Elizabeth. He took the decision to try to kill the monster before he had a chance to hurt Elizabeth or to kill him. Victor received a letter for Henry which said that he was waiting for his return. He wanted to leave the laboratory the following day, so he came back and took out all the pieces of the human monster in a bag with some stones too. He took the bag in his boat. After some minutes, he threw the bag into the sea and watched how it disappeared.
He was happy because he knew he made the right choice. When he saw the coast, he noticed that there was a crowd of people watching him. Then, four men took him by the arm, saying that he was going with a judge, who wanted to ask him some questions about the murder. Victor was sad, but not worried. He was far away for some months, and he knew that it would be easy to explain that, so he went to the judge's house.
Chapter 12. Victor was in the judgment and was a bit scared when he knew that the creature has taken Henry's life. With this news, he couldn't more and fainted. For 2 long months, he was ill until he could speak to the judge Kerwin. Then the judge told him that his father came to visit him. It's curious because after a while from Henry's death, he wasn't that happy. And well, his father tells Victor that Elizabeth and Ernest are safe.
And a little of happiness came back to Victor. Some witnesses saw Victor on the island, so he could go home with his family. In the night, the guilt haunted him in his bed, and he started to shoot. He killed William, Justin, and Henry. His father thought he was just mad. He and his father were staying at a hotel in Paris, and Elizabeth sent him a letter where she expressed her doubts about whether he still loved her. Poor lady with uncertainty. Victor answered her immediately, assuring her that he loves her so much and he wants to marry her. When Victor and his father arrived to Geneva, Victor and Elizabeth decided to get married in 10 days. With a lot of fear, Victor was always with a gun and a knife.
Chapter 13. The wedding was done, and after a party in Victor's house, Elizabeth and he left for their honeymoon. They planned to stay in a hotel on the other side of the lake. Victor was enjoying the feeling of happiness because at last he and Elizabeth were together. Every noise every noise scared Victor, so he kept his gun under his coat. Victor decided to look for the monster and kill him. Elizabeth left Victor, and he searched in every corner, but he couldn't find anything. Only until he heard a loud scream that came from the room that Victor shares with Elizabeth.
It was too late when Victor came to the room. Elizabeth was dead. Other people heard the scream and came to the room. Victor told them to call the police. The others left Victor alone. Then he saw the monster watching him through the window. Victor took his gun and fired. He missed it, and the creature ran and jumped into the lake. Victor showed the other people where the monster jumped. Nobody could find the murderer. Suddenly, Victor had a terrible thought. He couldn't stop thinking about what could happen to his father. He left the hotel and returned to Geneva fastly. Fortunately, his family were safe, but the news about what happened to Elizabeth made his father ill until death.
The monster achieved all he wanted. He brought unhappiness to his creator. Victor didn't know what happened next. He left the real world. Whatever that was happening by that time made him go to prison because of his madness. Months later, he was free and had only the last wish: kill his creation.
Chapter 14. Well, now with unhappy and rancorous Victor, meanwhile he was visiting where his family was laying at rest, promised to his dead family to kill the murderer. Meanwhile, the monster was very pleasant at that. At last, Victor heard the monster's voice, and he ran towards the voice. But as you can guess, the monster is faster than him. Since that day, Victor was trying to catch him and kill him. He was full of pain and misery. Just sleeping was a rest for him. The monster left him some messages of where he was, and Victor followed those clues, of course, without winning any advantage. The last message was that the monster will go to the north. The cold is an inconvenience for miserable Victor.
Victor was too close to him, but then the storm started and the ice broke, leaving him in a short piece of it. Then he was left in the sea for many hours till he saw the captain's ship. He asked him to kill the monster by remembering the deaths of his whole loved ones. And then Victor's end by giving thanks to the captain for all the kindness he has treated him and accepts that he is close to die.
Chapter 15. Captain Robert heard the story and added a last note. In that way, if you read it, you will know it was true. Victor died some hours after he wrote his last words. The captain was sad for Victor's death. They had become good friends. At least Victor wouldn't be unhappy anymore. They left the body in a cabin near to the captain, and some minutes after, he heard a voice coming from the cabin. When the captain came there, he saw a huge shape that fits what Victor said in his story. The creature started to say that he has killed his creator too. The captain came towards him and told the monster that it was too late for Victor to forgive him, because his pain has ended. Then the monster said that he didn't know how he felt, the pain and unhappiness that he has been feeling. He knew that the people that he healed were good people and that he was doing bad. However, he couldn't stop himself. The creature didn't enjoy killing people. His heart was made for love just as another normal human.
He couldn't believe that Victor tried to find happiness with a wife after he didn't give one to the monster. It wasn't fair, but now it is over. The last person that the creature wanted to kill was Victor, and now it's done. After everything the monster did, who can blame him? Was the only one that made everything wrong. At the end, he just wanted love and friendship. He tried helping people, but what he received? A shot in his arm and a hate from the people who helped before. Even though everything he hated himself more than everyone, his death was near. So he decided to leave the ship and start to fight in the north. He was sure that he left more pain than Victor, but when was far away and the fire died, he could be dead by that time. After that, the captain saw how left the ship and how his small boat. The sea carried him away until he disappeared in the darkness.
And that would be all for this book. Let us know your opinions. Bye!